Welcome back. It is week 4 of the NFL season. That means I am back giving you my week 4 NFL Survivor Pool picks. I will give you 3 picks. I'm going to give you a high risk, high reward pick, a value pick, and a lock of the week. 3-0 so far. Let's keep the train rolling. If you're taking my picks, you're still alive in Survivor pools. And as my goal will be for the rest of the season is to keep you alive. Um, I'm going to take a team. You're going to take a team. We're all going to take a team. We're going to win some money, and we're going to keep rolling along in this long NFL season. Through 3 weeks, we've had some scares. Tampa Bay was a little bit of a scare last week as their lack of league. But hey, it doesn't matter how much you win by. All that matters is you win the game. So let's get right into it. As we always do, let's start off with our high risk, high reward pick of the week. For those who don't know, the high risk, high reward pick is a bad team that has a good matchup. That if you pick them, nobody else is probably going to pick them. And if they win, it pays off big time. But again, that high risk comes in because they're a bad team. And if they lose, you're done. Um, so looking at the board this week, there doesn't seem to be many really bad teams with great matchups. Right, Tennessee and Houston is an interesting one. I'm not sure who I would pick between that one, so I'm staying away from that. But the one that I landed on is all the way on Monday night, 2 0-3 teams, the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets. So the New York Jets are obviously a team that, they showed up week 1 and then they haven't really fulfilled that same, lofty, not expectations, but experiences, right? They haven't filled that since what we saw against week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm taking them as my high risk, high reward pick here. I know that's probably a dumb pick. Like, why would anyone ever take the New York Jets? But they do play the Miami Dolphins, who, for what it's worth, might be the worst team in the NFL. If not, they're a bottom 3 team in the NFL. The question mark surrounding the Jets as of this video is who's going to start at quarterback this week, right? We still have Justin Fields in concussion protocol, but with the game being on Monday night, that gives him an extra day to rest. Um, so if Justin Fields is able to go, that run game immediately sees a boost. If Tyrod Taylor's playing, it's not the worst thing, but the passing game, right, gets a boost. I think Tyrod Taylor's probably a better passer than Justin Fields, which bodes well for a Jets team playing Miami, whose defense might be the worst in the NFL. Miami doesn't have a lot going for them. I think whoever starts at quarterback this week, I don't necessarily know that it's that horrible of an issue, whether it be Tyrod Taylor or that, that's substantially different of an issue if it's Justin Fields. I think this whoever starts at quarterback gives the Jets kind of 2 different avenues to attack this bad Dolphins defense. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean the Jets still support one of the better defenses in the NFL, right? We saw Will McDonald kind of come into his own. It kind of feels like he's really jumping to that development stage here. And then Sauce Gardner is still a premier corner in the league. I think the Jets have enough pass rush to get to Tagovailoa a little bit out of his rhythm, which, as we've seen this year, is just what you need to, completely shut down this Miami Dolphins offense. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they're still there, but they're gonna get the ball so inconsistently. It's hard to really trust that they're gonna be game breakers at this point. I think this is 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. I believe the Dolphins are favored by 2.5, but being at home, most of the times you get 3 points. So, it almost feels like the Jets are favored by a half a point here. If not, this is a pick 'em game. This is kind of feels like a must win game just for dignity's sake for either team. And just given what we've seen this year, I mean, we've seen the Jets almost take down the Steelers and start the year 1-0. So using that, giving the Jets as my high risk, high reward pick of the week. I usually don't do this, but I think I'm going to advise against picking this. There's just not a lot of value in these high risk, high reward picks this week. And if you lose with the Jets, you're going to feel so bad. Um, but with that being said, I needed to make a pick. Give me the New York Jets. Our next pick, our value pick of the week. So our value pick is a middle level team, not quite the elite teams, not quite the bad teams who have a good matchup. So looking through the list this week, Washington, Atlanta is an interesting one. seeing that Atlanta got 30 nothing to the Carolina Panthers. Um, the Panthers Patriots, Chargers Giants. I think the Chargers are a little bit better than to be put into a value pick of the week. So I'm going right back to Monday night again. I'm going with the Denver Broncos and Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Cincinnati's 2-1 record is kind of not indicative of who they are as a team. With Jake Browning starting at quarterback last week, they got absolutely destroyed by that Minnesota Vikings defense, probably top five unit in the NFL. And lucky for the Bengals and Jake Browning is they get to play against probably another top five unit in the NFL in Denver. So when we look at this Bengals offense, we break it down, right? There's a lot of people who say, "Oh, they're all right. They still have the receiving weapons, right? They have Jamar Chase, they have T. Higgins. Um, Jamar Chase is, one of the better receivers in the NFL, but he gets Pat Surtain this week. And I'm not saying that Pat Surtain is Darrell Revis, but if there's anyone in the league who can be able to kind of take a side away by himself or take a player away by himself, it is Pat Surtain. So with Surtain on Jamar Chase, of course Denver's going to have to, put at least one more set of eyes on Jamar Chase, but I think they can put a little bit more emphasis on T. Higgins by throwing different looks at, T. Higgins' way, whether it be roll of safety over the top, whether that be, dropping outside linebacker to a flat to a curl zone, whether that be play, press and run um, on him and get physical with him at the line. But really, Jake Browning is running the show, and as we saw last week, I mean, he threw some of the worst passes in NFL history last week. I think this Broncos team was sitting at 1-2 has a very good chance to, really be opportunistic with these, errant passes um, by Jake Browning. Not to mention that the Bengals still don't really sport a great offensive line. I think Denver, who led the league in sacks last year, has a chance to, really get after Jake Browning, make him feel uncomfortable, and just continue to throw havoc pressures like kind of what we saw the Vikings do. On the defensive side of the ball for the Bengals, they're not a great team. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, there's nothing that really scares you. I think Denver can run the ball in this game. I think if J.K. Dobbins gets going and if R.J. Harvey gets going in that matter, it's going to help Bo Nix really settle in and kind of shake off those first three weeks where it's kind of been, he's kind of rusted out. It looks, not that he's having a sophomore slump, but he certainly looks, not what we saw in the middle to the end of the year last year. Also, Denver is kind of in a desperate need for a win. Not desperate, we're only week four, but if they can get a game on the Chiefs have a tough matchup with the Ravens this week. Chargers are going to the Giants, so they could easily start 4-0. So if the Broncos go down, three games in the division, that they're going to be climbing for the rest of the year. I think this is a very winnable game for the Broncos, and I think this is a game that, um, we kind of see what we saw in that Broncos team who did make the playoffs last year. Give me the Broncos as my value pick of the week. Finally, the lock of the week. This is the one you guys are all waiting for. This is my pick. This is going to be your pick. This is going to be everybody's pick who's watching the video. This is a team that is going to win their matchup. And this is a team that's going to keep you alive in your survivor pool. So there are two options to me in this for this slot. It's between the New Orleans Saints Buffalo Bills and Cleveland Browns Detroit Lions. So my gut thought is to go with the Bills over the Saints, just because I think that's the most lopsided game this week. I think the Bills are so much better than the Saints are. But given that the Bills play in a very weak division, I think we save the Bills for a matchup down the road against Miami or the Jets. So with that being said, I'm going to take the Detroit Lions over the Cleveland Browns for my lock of the week. Kind of the opposite of the Bills. Like the Lions play in one of the tougher divisions, right, with the Packers, Vikings, and Bears. And while there will be opportunities, I think this is a week where you kind of just need to stay alive, right? This is kind of a week where there's not really many. I guarantee that this team is going to win. But for me, I guarantee that this Lions team is going to win. Like we kind of saw with the Browns did the Packers last week, shutting down that run game, which was able to get the pass rush into Jordan Love, which spelled great results for the Browns. I think that the Lions, the Packers are kind of one dimensional in their run game. Not that's a bad thing because Josh Jacobs is an awesome running back. But the Lions can kind of attack you from different ways in the run game. And I think preparing for two running backs is obviously much harder than preparing for one running back. And as we saw on Monday night against the Ravens, it seems likely that both running backs are still going to be involved. We're going to see ground and pound with David Montgomery, and we're going to see, lightning speed with Jameer Gibbs. So I think the Lions should be able to run the ball in this game. And if that's the case, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is another great game. Working those underneath crossers, working that mid to semi mid dig routes, working some outside comebacks, things like that. That's again, that's only going to spell great news for Jameson Williams. Everybody keeps creeping up. I think we see Jameson Williams shot maybe a couple times in this game, which could provide great results for fantasy owners who are hanging on to Jameson Williams. And as for the Browns, again, there's nothing that really scares you on that offense. I know Quinton Judkins ran good against the Packers last week, but look at what the Lions did to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens last week with their defensive line. They killed the Ravens' offensive line to the tune of 7 sacks. Now, Joe Flacco obviously can't move as well as Lamar Jackson. So if they can get Joe Flacco off his spot, I mean, this is going to be a long game for the Browns. Um, this is a game where we're looking at it and it feels like a no-brainer. Just take the better team here. The Lions are still one of the better teams in the NFL. I think that they come away with the win. They finished 3-1 to get back to the top of that division, especially with the Packers kind of having a difficult matchup with the Cowboys this week. So giving the Lions in this one for my lock of the week, and that's going to do it. Just for a short recap here, Lions lock of the week. We got the New York Jets as our high risk, high reward pick of the week, and we have the Denver Broncos as our value pick of the week. As always, thanks for everyone to watch. Drop in the comments who your lock of the week is. Let me know how your survivor pools have been going, and let's make some money this year, guys. Let's stay alive in our survivor pool, and have a good one. I will see you next week for our Week 5 survivor pool picks. Peace.
Fuck yeah!